thank you for that. That was wonderful. You know, when I was thinking about getting up here this morning, I was reminded that Adrian videotapes this, so I've got to be careful what I say, and I've got to be careful about the time because I know what this means. But I was also thinking, and as they were doing the sign language up there, I was reminded of that video clip. I don't know who's seen it. The guy signing behind President Obama that was fired from the UN. But I thought I'd better not make a comment about the president. I don't need the FBI in my house. Anyway, so I'm not going to comment about that, but I think I just did, and I'm pretty sure it was just recorded. Well, once a year, I get the privilege, along with Mrs. Ertl usually, to take over the service and have a platform and let Pastor Harding go on vacation. It's very important, we believe, to let him have a little downtime. You can always tell when it's about that time of the year he starts getting a little stressed, but I'm not going to talk about him because I'm sure he'll be watching this. Normally, when it comes time for me to work up a sermon, I take this opportunity to go off the reservation and talk about something that I want to talk about that has absolutely nothing to do with the service of the morning. Usually it's a platform that I want to speak on or a subject that is important to me. Today, however, as much as I hate to use a sports metaphor when giving a homily, I got the hanging curveball, Mrs. Ertl. All right? I got the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Now, not only did I have in mind what I wanted to talk about, but I see this as a sign. Because this is what I wanted to talk about, and I had no clue that this was the Sunday. This story is so important in the Bible that it's not told once. It's not told twice. It's not told 3 times. 4 different times in the Bible this story is told. That's how important it is. And I think, what a wonderful time to be pressed into service when I got this curveball. So I think about what I wanted to talk about. You know, I've been going to church a long time, and as you can imagine, as most of you have, you've heard this story literally dozens of times, if not hundreds of times. And it makes me think, I don't know where I read this or I saw this at one point, but it makes me think of, there's a story about a young pastor who was ministering in a church, and it was his first time in front of the congregation, and he got the hanging curveball. Right? He got this story. So he worked really hard. He put together what he thought was a riveting homily. He practiced it, got up in front of the mirror. He knew what he was going to say. Sunday morning came. It was his turn to get up and stand in front of the congregation. And he said, I want to talk about the story of the 5,000 loaves and the 2,000 fish that we were able to feed 5 men. How many of you could possibly do that? The congregation did what you're doing, and one gentleman raised his hand, and he looked at him, he said, blasphemy! You believe you can actually do that? And then the guy told him about the mistake that he had made. And he was so embarrassed that he couldn't say anything else, and he sat back down. But that congregation was much like this congregation. We're a friendly bunch. We're a forgiving bunch, right? We know that people make mistakes. So after the service, they pulled the young pastor aside and said, listen, don't be miffed by this. Don't feel bad about this. You need to brush yourself off and get up. So they said to him, the leaders of the church said, here's what we need you to do. Go back. Work on this sermon again. Put it together. Practice it. And get up next week firmly and do it over. So that next Sunday he gets up and he says, I want to talk about the story of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and how Jesus fed 5,000 men with their families. How many of you can do that? And the old man raised his hand again. And he looked at him and he said, you mean to believe you could actually do that? And the old guy said, yeah. You tell me how. He said, with the leftovers from last week's sermon.
Nice. That's good.
That story is a story of faith. And about the disciples needing to have faith that Jesus could do that. They were filled with doubt. we're filled with doubt. You know, when Jesus hears the fears of his men, he says, well, you men go feed them. Now, remember, at the time, this story, we think of, like, you know, we're in the northeast Pennsylvania, so like we hear bread, right? We're loaves. We're thinking of that good old New York City loaf, like it takes 3 people to carry it. We're thinking about fish, like Atlantic cod, where the thing is bigger than the person. That's not what this was. This was a little kid's lunch. There was a young man that was there, and his mother had packed him a lunch of at what we would look at it today and say, that's not a loaf. It's a flatbread biscuit, 5 of them. And the fish were equivalent to what we would think as 2 canned sardines. That's what Jesus had to work with. And that's why the disciples looked at him and they had doubt. But he said, listen, he organized the crowd. He set them into 12 sections. He sent each of his disciples out and said, come to me and I will give you, and go out, and when you need more, come back. And they did this until everyone was fed. And then at the end, he said, get together all the bread that's left, and it filled 12 baskets. He had more at the end than he started with. And that's about faith. That's about having the faith and believing in Jesus. We don't always have faith. We don't have faith all the time. But when the Lord says we need to have faith, he's talking about this much. He's not talking about this grandiose gesture of massive amounts of faith. Matthew says, if ye have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place. Nothing shall be impossible to you. You know, beginning of this year, my family and I moved here. We're here 14 years. I forget how small my children were. I go into pastor's office and there's a picture of my son Derek standing there getting First Holy Communion. He's this tall. You know, it's unbelievable. But we're here 14 years, and so we were a young family when we moved to this area. And so one of the things that we did, we bought a house. We had no furniture. We had no money. My wife said, I want to get furniture, so we went to some discount furniture place and we got ourselves a couch, a love seat, and a chair, right? Single chair. And it was nice. It served its purpose, but it was cheap. You get what you can afford, right? So the furniture, to the point that I sit in a couch and I need a crane to get out. Now, that has nothing to do with my size. It has to do with the couch. But anyway, I need a crane to get out of this couch. So I promised my wife that I would get new furniture. It's time to get new furniture. Now as we're a little older, okay? And, furniture shopping, you just don't go furniture shopping. You gotta think about it, right? You want to get the right furniture, because we figure we're still young, but this could be the last furniture we invest in. So anyway, I make the announcement at my dinner table. I said, we're not getting furniture until I get rid of the old furniture, because there's nothing I hate worse than stacking old furniture somewhere outside in the garage. Take it to the church. They'll do something with it. Okay. Anyway, we're loaded with everybody's old stuff that nobody wanted. So anyway, I made the announcement. I said, we're not getting rid of this. My son comes up with this wonderful idea. He says, listen, Dad. He said, if I sell that furniture, can I keep the money? I said, I don't care what you do. Get rid of the furniture. Unbeknownst to me, that night, the next day, he puts it on Craigslist. Right? Wednesday I had dinner. He puts it on Craigslist. The next day I come home from work Friday. There's no furniture in my house. I walk in like someone stole the furniture. Literally, my son put it on Craigslist. Some young lady from Dingman's Ferry came down with her father, paid him $200, whatever, put it in the no furniture. We just can't replace furniture that fast. So it took us about 6 weeks to find the furniture we wanted. But you don't just buy furniture, you order furniture, right? So we had to order furniture. And it took another 6 weeks till the furniture came in. 3 months. I can't begin to tell you the hole in my life because we didn't have any furniture. I didn't know what to do. I came home and my wife was looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I didn't know where to sit. I didn't know where to eat. I couldn't watch TV. I found myself going to bed, because there's a TV in the bedroom, at like 6 o'clock at night. I found myself staying at work longer, watching stuff on the internet, so I didn't have to go home because I had furniture. And then it dawned on me, if not having furniture leaves that much of a hole in my life, what would not having this church do to me? This is furniture we're talking about. And as the president of the council of this congregation, and looking where our finances are sometimes, that concerns me. It concerns me that we could at some point be in a position where we don't have this congregation and this church. And I can tell you, when I look around this congregation, I guarantee I'm not the only one in here today that would have this massive hole in their life if this church and this congregation were not here. Pastor Harding is the minister of this congregation, and it's not comfortable, and I don't think it's the place for the minister to stand up here and talk about money. I don't have that baggage behind me, so I'm going to talk about it.
Good.
But anyway, I'm a believer in signs. I really am a believer in signs, and so I knew I wanted to talk about this, and I thought, boy, you know, the faith and the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and it ties in so well. And this week at work, I get an email that I get every month, blast from Bloomsburg University, from the president. Sends a message out monthly. Now, for those of you old-timers, when I say the word spam, you probably think it's sliced, canned, chopped meat, put it on a sandwich. No, I'm talking about, I look at that like it's spam when it comes to my desk. I literally delete it. But I didn't delete it this time. I opened it. I don't know why. And when I opened it, the first line I see from the president is congratulating Michael and Beth Boguski of Mechanicsburg, PA, for having committed $1 million to the Bloomsburg University Foundation to support university initiatives. I'll tell you why it caught my eye. It caught my eye because I met Mike Boguski on day 1 of Bloomsburg, because his first day at Bloomsburg was my first day at Bloomsburg, and his dorm room was right next to mine. And Mike was a friend of mine from day 1. And 2 things went through my mind immediately when I saw that. Number 1, clearly I went into the wrong business. Mike Boguski started and is president and CEO of Eastern Alliance Insurance Group. Number 2, and this is human nature, and and people could say they don't think this way. I do. I'm sure a few of you do. I'm thinking, this guy didn't give his only $1 million. How much does he have to be worth to have 2 kids? Let's say he's tithing, which all of us want to say we do, but few of us really tithe. I'm one of those guys that, like, my time is worth so much an hour, and so if I add this, by the time I get done, I give 30%, right? Anyway, I'm thinking to myself, if this guy's tithing, he's got $10 million. Wow. Wow. $1 million. But, so Mike's, and he's a nice guy. Mike Boguski is the first one in his family to ever go to college. Mike didn't come from money. His family, nice family, had, got by. He did not come from money. Everything he gave to that university, when he gave it, came out of his pocket. Nice guy. But one of the things that I wanted to point out about it, what I thought was interesting about the story, is that according to the vice president of university advancement, Mike, and this is, and I haven't talked to Mike yet, but I'm about to send him an email this week. Mike used, as they say, a sophisticated giving strategy that maximized the overall impact of the gift by including an estate component and support from his Eastern Alliance Insurance Group through its Earned Income Tax Credit program. I'm a chef. I have no idea what that means. However, I know Keith knows what that means. And I'm going to ask Keith, when this is done, what he did. But to me, the important thing was, it was a strategy, a giving strategy. My question today is, how many of us have a giving strategy? Because we need to. Because if we don't all employ a giving strategy, we may not be here. And we may have a hole that can't be replaced by going to some furniture outlet. I'm a reader. I like to read. It kind of is mind-soothing to me. And so some of you may have read this book, some of you may have heard the book, but anyway, it's a guy by the name of Brian Kluth wrote a book called The 40-Day Spiritual Journey to a More Generous Life. And even if you didn't read it, you could probably assume what that means. He's talking about improving one's spiritual journey by giving money, right? Of giving time and giving talent. And so he wrote this book from his heart. But guess what? It was an overnight bestseller. You know what comes with bestseller, right? Lots of money. And so he was contacted by NBC to do an interview. And the reporter interviewed him, asked him, she said, "So you think God wants everyone rich?" He said, "No, I don't believe that." She was a little surprised, and she said, "Well, what do you believe?" And he responded, quote, "I believe that everyone needs to learn to become more generous with whatever God has given them." Become more generous with whatever God has given them. She looked at him and said, "Really? Didn't your best-selling book make you rich?" He replied, "No. It helped me become more generous." He went on to state, the truth is, every one of us in America is rich when you compare us to the rest of the world. What each of us needs to learn is how to become more generous with whatever God entrusts to us. I'm a reader. I'm an internet search guy. That's how I kill downtime. I love researching stuff. And so it got me to thinking this whole business of being rich and being wealthy. Because in our country, we are completely in denial when it comes to what we have versus the rest of the world. But I'll put it in perspective for you. There's a website and I'm sure some of you will probably go to this later. There's a website on the internet, www.globalrichlist.com. Global Rich List. What you do basically, sum it up for you, is you get on this website and it asks you to enter how much you earn annually. And when you put that in the list, it tells you where you rank among the 7+ billion people on Earth. You want an eye-opening experience? Put that in. So I did. I just put in, now I don't know, who knows what the poverty level in this country is right now? Somewhere like mid-30,000s. If you make mid-30,000s, you're considered poverty in the United States. Poverty. Right? An annual income, think about this, an annual income of $40,000 a year. Now that sounds like, it might sound like a lot, but you got a family, you're dangling just above poverty, right? An annual income of $40,000 makes you the 33,982,065th richest person in the world. In the world. That means that if you make $40,000 a year, there are roughly 34 million people on Earth that make more than you, out of 7 billion. Now, to put that in perspective, that means you're in the top, listen to me, 0.57% wealthiest person on Earth. Meaning at $40,000, 99.5% of everyone lives on this face of the earth makes less than you. And we feel like we're in poverty at times. And we feel like we're in poverty. You know, when I look to doing homilies, I'm an internet guy, and I've said that. Being a minister, by the way, isn't easy. But I got to tell you, it's getting easier as you can search this stuff. You don't really have to have this massive knowledge. I wanted to find out information about money and the Bible. I read the Bible, but I'm not as much of a reader as I am. I'm not this huge, Bible diving in and thinking about it. So I just did a quick Google, and I wanted to find out what Bible passages referred to money and giving. And at the split second, I got 35 before I even blinked. 35. Things like Deuteronomy 23. Do not charge your brother interest, whether on money or food or anything else that may earn interest. Proverbs 17. Of what use is money in the hand of a fool, since he has no desire to get wisdom? Ecclesiastes. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. This too is meaningless. Proverbs 13, dishonest money dwindles away, but he who gathers money little by little makes it grow. One of my favorites, Matthew 6. No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both money and God. You know, if I didn't tell you that that came from the internet, you guys would think like I was like a deep diving reader. But this information is out there. But it's important. It's important stuff. I'm not a minister. You know, once a year I get up to do this, and I have people that tell me all the time, you missed your calling and you should be doing this. And I got to tell you, I'm not the smartest guy on earth, but I'm a pretty intelligent guy. And that means I know what it entails being a minister, and this is not it. This is the fun part of it. You know, what Pastor Harding does week in, day out, week in, week out, is important stuff. And it's life-changing stuff. Sometimes it's life-saving stuff. This guy is holding people's lives in his hand. I'm a pressure guy, but I'm not sure I want that. I'm not sure I want it. But I'll tell you, I need it. I need it. And again, we need to continually support this congregation and this church if we're going to rely on that. Look, I'm here once a year. I love this church. I love this congregation. I need this church. I need this congregation. And I know I get asked to do this because, quite frankly, I don't mind standing up in front of a group of people and talking. And that's not necessarily easy for everyone. Look, I knock on wood, and I got that ability, but not everybody's got it. But I can tell you, if I didn't have this church and I didn't have this congregation, there would be a massive hole in my life. And again, I look around and I know that there are people in this congregation with that same hole. Every year we talk about time and talents. Right? We're asking people to give as much as they can. And I think back to Mike Bogusky and having a giving strategy. You know, and it makes sense. It makes sense. We need to think about it. Look, you know, I said to my wife, how much do you want to spend on furniture? We came up with a number, right? And we saved for that. And when it was time to buy